Good afternoon and welcome to Digital Scotland's Future-Proof Digital Infrastructure and Connectivity session. During the last 9 months, as many of you have moved to remote working and by necessity are spending so much more of our time online, whether it's on WhatsApp, Zoom or Teams, the importance of a good internet connection or mobile signal has become absolutely paramount as we try to remain connected, living as normal and fulfilling a life as possible during the most abnormal of times. We used to talk about utilities in terms of water, gas and electricity, but it feels like digital connectivity has now become an essential service, as we heard in the conference earlier this morning. As much as the coronavirus has affected us all on a personal level, the pandemic has also put into sharp focus the resilience of our businesses, public services and our institutions. Without good connectivity, many of our companies, which are still trading under the most difficult of conditions, would have had no alternative but to close. At least through an online presence coupled with a lot of entrepreneurial spirit and creativity, they have been able to transact with their customers and supply chains. The internet is still young, and a technology-led response to COVID would have been almost impossible just a few years ago when broadband and mobile connectivity speeds were much slower. We are in some ways fortunate to be navigating a global pandemic with internet bandwidths that far exceed what they were in the noughties. None of what we enjoy now could have been achieved without a strong digital connectivity sector. The infrastructure providers who dig up the roads, put in the overhead lines and build the masts that deliver the services that we all need and rely upon. A strong telecom sector also requires strong government at national and local level, with well thought through connectivity plans that are strategic and above all achievable. In this context, connectivity relies upon leaders in Edinburgh and London working together with local councils, whether it's to deliver the last mile hop, replacing our old copper wire networks with full fibre, or agreeing on the next generation 5G technologies that have the potential to transform our lives still further. Above all, government knows it must and should do more to improve access to digital infrastructure, to ensure people and communities are not left behind. For that to happen, we need a coordinated, cross-sectoral approach and clarity in an industry which can at times seem complex and impenetrable. I'm delighted that we are joined for this session this afternoon by some of our leading government connectivity specialists who are helping to build the foundations of that successful digital infrastructure future, whether it be mobile or fixed wire delivery. We're joined by Robbie McGee, Deputy Director of Digital Connectivity at the Scottish Government, Sarah Einan, Infralink Programme Manager at Scottish Futures Trust, Anne McClister, Head of Digital Economy at Glasgow City Council, and Elaine Doherty, Regional Lead, Scotland and North East for City Fibre. We will start with their presentations and follow them with an audience Q&A at the end. And so for all of you watching remotely, please do send through your questions and I will do my best to pick them up. In the meantime, Robbie, we're going to start with you if that's okay. Welcome to Digital Scotland.
Thank you, Kevin, and good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Robbie McGee. I head up the Digital Connectivity Division in the Scottish Government. So we're investing in a number of programmes to extend broadband and mobile networks across Scotland. I guess equally importantly, we're also working to develop policies that stimulate commercial investment in digital infrastructure while at the same time looking to push and shine a light on the innovation 5G and full fibre networks will unlock in future. So in terms of what I'm going to cover off in today's presentation, I'll be focusing on the role of digital connectivity through the pandemic, about the extent to which capacity and reach of Scotland's digital infrastructure has really built up over the past decade. I'll also talk a bit about the investments that the Scottish Government is making in this space, so focusing in particular on the R100 programme and the Scottish 4G infill programme, and also about what might be coming next, particularly around some of the new funding commitments that are starting to emerge at UK level could benefit Scotland. And I'll finish up by talking about the role that digital connectivity will play in underpinning economic recovery from COVID and the shift to a net zero economy. I guess it was almost difficult to kind of take the step back in the midst of a crisis of this type and start to draw lessons from it. I guess all of our lives over the past 9 months have been turned upside down. So many ways there's kind of stories of personal loss all around us, and obviously a massive economic toll that's hurt us, it's hurt the organisations that we work for, and obviously will take many years to recover from. I guess just as we can look at the situation today and see some hope on the horizon with vaccines hopefully within touch and distance, I guess we can also see some positives in the way that people and organisations across the public sector and indeed the wider economy have pivoted to digital ways of working. I think it's true to say that just about every organisation of any sort of scale almost had to become a digital organisation, perhaps almost overnight back in March, and has had to innovate and transform the digital offerings since. And a lot of that work and investment has been in systems and in platforms, but all of the digital tools in the world won't help you if your people don't have the digital connectivity that will allow them to access those tools. And I guess the question that kind of popped into my mind in preparing for this was where might we have been had the pandemic hit 10 years ago? And if I'm being honest, I don't think we'd have been in a particularly good place. We certainly wouldn't have been able to work as effectively from home. I think we would have found that all of our organisations wouldn't have been as resilient, wouldn't have been able to deliver the services and functions remotely to the extent that they have. And as a result, you'd either have had, well, I guess, even greater economic damage than we've seen this year, or an inability to have the sort of lockdown that saved so many lives. So I guess after an initial shudder, I immediately switched to positivity mode that the picture has improved so dramatically in recent years, in large part down to commercial investment, and we'll hear about City Fiber's contribution to that later in this session, but also as a result of public investment programmes which have extended infrastructure and services beyond the areas where companies like City Fiber will invest commercially. I could do lots of compare and contrasts on broadband and mobile stats to kind of show you how things have changed. But I think a before and after visual always helps. So what we're looking at here in grey is planned commercial coverage, commercial broadband coverage, what was planned in 2012. Not what had been delivered in 2012, but what was planned. And as you can see, it pretty much covers urban areas, and that's about it. You know, nothing on the islands, very little outside of urban centres. What we have here in this next slide is what's been delivered through the Digital Scotland Superfast Broadband Programme. That was a public investment programme that was managed by the Scottish Government, by Highlands and Islands Enterprise, the whole range of investors sitting behind it, central and local government, EU, well over £400 million worth of investment to push broadband coverage out to non-commercial areas. Over the course of the programme, we've gone from 66% fibre broadband coverage in Scotland to well over 95%. The islands went from having no coverage to having well over 80% of premises on the islands covered. And it's that investment that's perhaps mitigated what could have been even more extreme economic and social impacts of the pandemic. So in total, the DSSB programme has connected over 950,000 premises across Scotland. That's about 110,000 more than was originally planned. It's really transformed access to broadband across rural Scotland and driven new fibre out to areas that wouldn't otherwise have had it. So the picture has improved and it will continue to improve. We're still seeing substantial commercial investment across Scotland, and we've tried to incentivise that. So we've brought in 100% non-domestic rates relief on new fibre, and that's for a 10-year period, double the time that similar relief in the rest of the UK applies for. But we also have a number of publicly funded infrastructure programmes in train, and I very briefly wanted to take you through some of those. So I guess the biggest of those is the R100, or Reaching 100% programme. And it was set up to ensure that every home and business in the country could access superfast broadband. So there's three components to R100, the commercial investment that I've spoken about, three contracts that will push out new full fibre connections, and a voucher scheme as well. And together, I mean, this really represents a massive infrastructure investment for Scotland. £600 million of public investment through the three contracts alone. Two of those are at the deployment stage and just about to deliver the first connections. That covers the north of Scotland has been much delayed due to a procurement challenge, which to everyone's frustration meant that the contract award had to be put on hold for a while. But the really good news is that's now been resolved, and we'll be signing the north contract with BT in the next couple of weeks. So the R100 programme was born out of a superfast ambition, but the contracts themselves will deliver something much more than 30 megabits per second. The vast majority built across all three contracts will be full fibre, so that's gigabit capable networks, 1,000 megabits per second, and that's kind of as future-proofed as it gets, really. So it's a programme that we're all really excited about, particularly now that we're starting to see the first connections being delivered. And as we've seen with the Digital Scotland programme, once that momentum starts to build, we can very quickly start to deliver some really incredible results. And that's the basis on which the organisations represented here today, the businesses across rural Scotland, the basis on which they can plan their own digital journeys and transformation. We also have a voucher scheme as part of the R100 programme. So it's another important element. There's up to £5,000 per premise available from the Scottish Government, and in some cases can be put together with existing UK level voucher schemes, which means a really significant amount of funding available, which we hope will drive full fibre coverage in areas that sit beyond the reach of the contracts. We also have an interim voucher available that will be for premises that will have a connection delivered through the contracts, but after 2021, and that will ensure that everyone in Scotland can access a superfast connection by the end of 21, which of course was our original policy commitment. For those of you who do want to find out more, we've got a new refreshed website with an updated address checker, and that will tell you whether your address has coverage, whether it's in scope for the contracts or eligible for vouchers. And the site will also signpost you to lots of information on registered suppliers for the voucher scheme. There's lots of public investment in the broadband space and more to come. So the UK government announced in last week's spending review that they will commit £1.2 billion to drive gigabit broadband in non-commercial areas over the next 4 years, and that's part of a larger £5 billion commitment. And you won't be surprised to hear that we're making a strong case that a large proportion of that funding should come to Scotland. So I think there's real scope for collaboration on this in the months ahead. I think together all of that offers the prospect of yet another step change in broadband availability, speeds and capability in the years ahead. But it'll do more than that. It will really enrich Scotland's national infrastructure, pushing new fibre backhaul deeper into rural areas and paving the way for the growth of 5G and the data economy. We also have an investment programme that's focused on improving mobile coverage. That's the 4G infill programme. That's a £25 million investment to deliver new 4G mobile infrastructure and services in selected hotspot areas across rural Scotland. We've got around 40 masts in total that we're targeting, and the locations are shown in the slide. We've got 3 masts that are currently live with over 20 that are currently in build, and we've got a pipeline of build and activations that runs all the way through to mid-2023. And again, you'll get regular programme updates on our website. And as is the case on broadband, there's also lots of activity happening at UK level that will benefit Scotland, in particular the Shared Rural Network, or SRN, which is a deal 4 UK mobile network operators have done with the UK government to share infrastructure, extend their networks and deliver 95% combined coverage across the UK. I think we should see real benefits from that working alongside the 4G infill programme in the years ahead. I guess there was a time where the debate about digital connectivity was drawn quite narrowly. It tended to be about coverage or about speeds, and talked about, for every pound that was invested in the Digital Scotland programme, there would be £12 of benefits to the Scottish economy. I think now there's actually a real appreciation that connectivity underpins every sector in the economy, and that its impact is actually far wider, and I think that's been shown through the 9 months of the pandemic. Digital infrastructure isn't just about delivering superfast or gigabit speeds into people's homes. It's about supporting the data economy and allowing us to maximise the economic impact of that data-driven innovation. I think that's recognised in the recommendations that have been made by the Infrastructure Commission for Scotland, and also coming out of the report that was published from the advisory group on economic recovery. And our agenda in government is very much about responding to those recommendations and developing a new digital strategy, a key part of which is about continuing to drive that infrastructure out, whether through the use of public sector assets, as we'll hear about shortly, or other incentives to assist commercial deployment of infrastructure, or indeed directly through investment programmes like R100. But it's also about maximising the economic impact of that infrastructure and the technology and the innovation that enables. And that's a key element of the refreshed digital strategy, which is obviously still out for consultation and I know has been discussed in the earlier sessions today. But just on a final thought, I think from a connectivity point of view, our focus is very much on ensuring that no one is left behind. That's a big theme within the digital strategy. And as you continue to embark on that digitalisation journey within your own organisations, what we're aiming for and what I think we will see in the near future is that connectivity will no longer be a barrier, as has been in so many parts of the country in the past, but an enabler. So thanks for listening. I look forward to answering any questions that you have a bit later on.
Thank you, Robbie. Thank you very much for that, Robbie. That was fantastic, and hopefully everyone will be primed now to have their questions ready. Just a reminder, the Slido link is open, so you can just insert your question beneath the video screen. And I just want to welcome now onto stage our next speaker, and that is Sarah Einan, and she is the, as I said before, the Programme Manager for Infralink at Scottish Futures Trust. Sarah, welcome to Digital Scotland.
Thanks very much, Kevin, and good afternoon, everyone. As Programme Lead, I'm very pleased to be here to talk to you about Infralink, what it can do for you as a public sector organisation, and how it can contribute to achieving the goal that we all have, which is better connectivity and capacity in Scotland. Before we get into the usual programme management chat of challenges, outputs and benefits, let's take a moment. In these times of uncertainty and strain, wouldn't it be great to have something that sets Scotland apart, bringing together those that value connectivity with the mobile operators who deliver it, that utilises the existing investment the public sector has already made in assets and methods to collect data on those assets, that makes the public sector's engagement with mobile operators less fraught, more efficient, and ultimately more productive and rewarding, that opens the way for using healthy engagement to build long-lasting relationships and promotes investment and growth on the back of excellent countrywide connectivity. Infralink is a national initiative that, by focusing on the engagement, even the relationship between the public sector and landlords and the mobile industry as tenants, will put Scotland in a better position to showcase what it can offer to support better connectivity. So what are the current challenges to achieving this vision? Let us be under no illusion, mobile infrastructure is perceived as a burdensome tenant. The requirement for continuous power supply, the potentially visible nature of the structure, and the need for multiple parties to get access to a site to carry out maintenance and upgrades are all elements that go through a landlord's mind. The introduction of the Electronic Communications Code in December 2017 was intended to clarify the law and rights of the parties, but in effect it has created a less certain and more them and us feel to negotiations. This is not conducive to a proactive engagement and finding solutions that work for both parties. Add to this the operational issues of trying to find out who owns what, initial draft leases favouring one party or the other, and the technical nature of the negotiations, and it's an area some landlords don't want to stray into. As a result, 4G rollout, whether that's increasing the current capacity in the 4G network or extending it into more rural areas, is being impacted, and you don't need a crystal ball to see the same thing happening for 5G. We know mobile rollout will continue, and we have heard here today repeatedly that we need it to. Local authorities and agencies will need to deal with these challenges. Infralink will offer a credible option to current practice by establishing tools that work at a national level and are balanced and transparent. Funded by the Scottish Government-backed Scotland 5G Centre, the tools will build off existing initiatives and set out best practice to provide a basis for meaningful discussion. For 4G, 5G and IoT technology, there will be 3 tools put in place. Standardised leases will give a balanced starting point for discussions, removing the need to negotiate standard terms, thereby allowing the parties to focus on the nuances of the site. Payment guidance framework will set out a recommended methodology and prices that will build upon the principles of the Electronic Communication Code and recognise the impact of digital infrastructure as a tenant. A national asset register will act as an online map-based marketplace to publicise assets that the public sector are willing to discuss making available to put mobile kit on. This will be a shop window for those public sector bodies interested in discussing connectivity in their area, with them being able to set out the terms up front. Each will be developed for land, buildings and street assets and take account of the differences between rural and urban areas. We can't guarantee that this will change industry's attitude or commercial interest in certain areas, but we have been told it will make those areas that use the Infralink tools and these kind of standardisation approach more attractive. Pleased to say that the first version of the standardised lease and payment guidance framework for land and buildings will be available on a public Infralink website in early 2021. These will then be reviewed and updated on a quarterly basis to ensure that we maintain the best practice badge by taking account of the code and feedback from their use. In these times where we know public sector resources strained, the question is, how will the Infralink tools help them? Some local authorities already work with mobile industry, and those that do this over a number of sites have themselves introduced standardised procedures and documents that they put up front in discussions. We have seen this in West Midlands 5G and closer to home in Forestry and Land Scotland and of course Glasgow City Council. Anne will share with you shortly the details of Glasgow's approach, but the reason that all of these organisations have gone down the standardisation route is to improve the management of their estate, use existing resources better, and to try to get more investment into their area. If public sector landlords can put on the table the assets that they are willing to discuss and the terms, then there will be less speculative discussions. The public sector can turn the conversation from being more demand-led by industry to being more opportunity-focused, promoting engagement, inviting information sharing, and encouraging earlier investment. We have here and now an example of this that Robbie referred to in the shared rural network. The public and private sector are investing over £500 million each to increase 4G coverage across the UK. By 2024, the coverage in Scotland from all four operators will have increased from the current 42% to at least 72%. That's a massive increase of 30% more of Scotland getting a choice of mobile operator. The shared rural network will be going into new territory, working in the areas that don't deal with telecoms leases on a regular basis. Knowing the hesitation this may cause, the Infralink tools will provide a positive starting point for discussions. We know from speaking with DMSL, who are leading SRN, that they are looking for local authorities who are wanting to engage about new sites and have a balanced starting point for discussions. Infralink can help local authorities with gearing up for those discussions. And let us not forget the reason we're here today to talk about connectivity. It's the use cases. The real impact of connectivity for local authorities has been seen in 2020. It allows employees to work from home, not just as a reaction to a worldwide pandemic, but as a new way of working. This could really assist SMEs in developing new business models and pushing discussions toward cloud platforms. In September, we saw NHS Highland announcing the deployment of digital technology in care homes to help reduce the spread of COVID-19. We saw in August this year the launch of the £5 million Connect programme funded by Scottish Government to help around 23,000 low-income households without proper internet access to get online. This will connect vulnerable family and friends. Digital inclusion will support our young people in writing applications, applying for grants or benefits, and keeping in touch with local support networks. Looking to the future in Dundee, we have seen investment in connectivity to support their smart region ambitions. In public sector service delivery, education, healthcare, connected autonomous vehicles and mobility as a service. This is with a desire to attract commercial investment into areas such as the Michelin Scotland Innovation Park. Knowing the benefits that Infralink can bring at an operational and strategic level, how will these be delivered? While Infralink is focused on the Scottish ecosystem, we've harnessed a wealth of expertise from across Scotland and the UK to create the delivery team. Scottish Futures Trust leads the programme. With its infrastructure expertise and awareness of what is happening in both the public sector and industry, we have the overview of local and national activity that can be built off. Connected Places Catapult are an Innovate UK funded innovation centre to help grow British business in the built environment by joining up the physical, digital and social elements. DWF is a global full-service legal firm who have played an active role in developing some of the best practice tools we are building off and acting for mobile and public sector parties. Barpoint are market-leading experts who advise on development and design of fixed and mobile connectivity solutions. They are well known to the public sector through the R100 programme and supporting local authorities in delivering their digital strategies. A key element that Infralink has mentioned is building off what is already out there. We're working with a number of organisations to ensure we are not operating in isolation at a Scottish or UK level. We're working with the Improvement Service and UK and Scottish Government to utilise existing services and tools such as ePIMS. We're learning from those local pioneers like West Midlands 5G, Forestry and Land Scotland and Glasgow City Council, and also from our own experience of delivering S4GI on behalf of Scottish Government that Robbie mentioned earlier. We're making Infralink and its tools part of the industry discussions that are happening here and now, such as SRN and the Speed Up Britain campaign. But we are not developing the tools in isolation from those that we want to use them. We have a number of local authorities, agencies and mobile industry organisations that are working with us to make the tools relevant to both sides. The tools will, however, be open for use by all. As mentioned, the commercial tools will be available on the Infralink website in the new year. We will be engaging with all local authorities and a number of agencies to invite them to join the asset register and discuss the tools further. If anyone would like to accelerate the engagement with the Infralink team, please get in contact either after the session in the exhibition lobby or by email. Now, I expect that a lot of this will not be new to you. Map-based registers are a known tool for managing assets, and standardised legal documents are used across local authority legal teams. The difference here is that we are setting these up as a starting point for use and operation across Scotland. Land, building, street furniture, 4G, 5G and IoT. Prime real estate through to remote pieces of land. It is up to each landlord how they take discussions forward and of course how industry responds. But with the Infralink tools and how we have created them, local authorities will have a credible starting point to improve efficiency and promote connectivity in their area. Thanks very much, and I look forward to your questions later.
Thank you for that, Sarah. Thank you for that. That was fantastic. And an exciting new programme to add to the connectivity landscape for 2021. I think everyone will agree Infralink is a good addition. I'd like to welcome now to stage our next speaker, who will hopefully give a kind of slightly different perspective, being from one of our largest local authority in Scotland, that's Glasgow City Council. I'm delighted to welcome Anne McClister, who is Head of Digital Economy for the Council there, and she will tell us all about some of the exciting work that Glasgow City Council has been doing to basically build a telecoms unit, which is going to be engaging with the mobile industry in particular. So, Anne, welcome to Digital Scotland.
Thank you, Kevin, and hello, everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to tell you about Glasgow's project. And it follows on very well from what Sarah has just said, where we, as a local authority, kicked off a project last year to do this. And I'll just give you a quick overview of the project that we undertook and why we did it. And actually, Sarah talked a lot there about the mobile industry. Our project addresses all forms of connectivity, so it's supporting connectivity. So, funnily enough, it's maximising connectivity. So, I guess initially it's why did we bother? It's all been said already in the last couple of presentations, but it was to ensure, our primary driver was to ensure that Glasgow had a fit-for-purpose connectivity fabric that supports inclusive economic growth, and I'll come back to that later on. We all know digital infrastructure is a necessary foundation, but we have, many of our city aspirations, we know we need digital technology and a good digital connectivity base to underpin inclusive growth, to support innovation. We have 2 innovation districts within the city. Support small businesses and to grow our tech sector. However, we're a council, we have limited means of investment, so what we want to do is make ourselves an attractive environment for others to invest. And attractive in this context means that we're easy to deal with and cost effective to deal with. We also know from the Future Telecoms Infrastructure Review and our own industry engagement that local authorities could work more closely with all aspects of the telecom sector, and we certainly could improve the efficiency of our processes when dealing with the industry. But also, and again, I'm glad Sarah covered it more than I did, we do need to understand and comply with the Electronic Communications Code because it is a shift in our obligations. So I thought that this next slide summed up the role of the local authority. The Future Telecoms Infrastructure Review basically said the 2 key areas where local authorities influence the proliferation of digital infrastructure is access to street and underground assets, although that's less common for local authority, but those assets that can support digital infrastructure, whether that's fixed or mobile. But also the local authority processes that enable the telecoms industry to deploy infrastructure. And that's everything from our planning process, wayleaves, and of course, just the sort of ordinary things like traffic management, which, you can't dig up a road without managing the traffic. And again, as I say, we also knew that our obligations under the code had changed significantly. So we had three priorities, as I've mentioned already: streamlining our council processes to make them more efficient. And streamlining is re-examining the processes. Where can we have repeatable processes? Where can we have standard templates? But also bringing in industry viewpoints on that, and not just doing it from a sort of an inward-looking approach. The single biggest request, and I've been to a few Scottish Government sort of round tables on this, and the single biggest request that I've heard from industry, and again, Sarah's alluded to this, is what are your assets? Tell us what assets you have, tell us where they are. And I guess a close second to that is, how do we contact the council? Who do we contact? What is our route to talk to somebody about telecoms and telecoms rollout in the council? So as I say, we had three priorities around our project. So we established a project which is a pithy title called the Digital Communications Infrastructure Project. And not surprisingly, it had three main aspects. It had the external aspect, which is the telecoms industry. It had the internal aspect, which are our processes, and the bit that joins those two, which is a telecoms unit at the point at which they meet. So our project, I'm not going to go through in detail, as I've already mentioned there. It was processes, it was assets, it was transparency around some of the pricing and the legal documents, and again, we worked very closely with Sarah's colleagues on the Infolink around some of the pricing and some of the legal documents, and this one-stop shop where we would have a front office to coordinate activity and assist industry stakeholders. So I've listed off some of the processes already. I have to say, we kicked the project off last year, and just at the end of last year, and then with COVID, it slowed down a little, but this was probably the most significant part of the project, which was, one, to understand all the processes that were affected by telecoms, and secondly, to map those processes and then look for efficiencies. And I won't go into the detail of some of the inefficiencies that were there, but we found a few that were quite straightforward to fix. Some of the other aspects were, what do we do about new processes? With sort of the evolution of 5G and 5G rollout, the deployment of small cells is already underway in some areas, and it is for 4G as well. So what are our processes going to be for putting small cells on street furniture? And actually, we looked at what's the nearest we have to that process, and believe it or not, it's hanging baskets on our street furniture or putting up our Christmas lights. So that it gave us a starting point, at least, to start the process and start the discussion. I guess another aspect, and again comes back to the code, because a lot of this was to do with the council not wanting to be ending up in a tribunal over lack of code compliance. Glasgow City Council didn't have a significant estate of mobile masts on our rooftops. Our social housing the Glasgow social housing is not part of Glasgow City Council, so the council didn't have that legacy estate, or more importantly, that legacy income stream from having masts, for example, on our rooftops. And we know from talking to many other local authorities, some of the ones that Sarah's mentioned, West Midlands 5G, a lot of the London authorities, that this is a huge area for local authorities where there will be a significant drop in their income stream associated with the rental values of their rooftops. So again, for us in Glasgow, it was slightly easier because we didn't have a legacy estate, and easier in that we didn't have to fight that battle. No local authority wants to take a drop in income stream right now. As I said, we wanted to have as much as possible templated and repeatable transparency of pricing, and just make sure that whatever we did it in conjunction with industry. Our asset catalogue has already, so our portal went live about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I can't remember, and you can access the asset catalogue on that portal. I beg your pardon, I haven't forwarded the slide. So our asset catalogue, we've already got a significant amount of interest from that, and I know that Sarah and Infolink are working on that on a broader national basis. At the moment, we only have GCC property and GCC assets on the database, but we will be looking to expand that with other city stakeholders' data. And by that, I don't just mean public sector. I mean also if if there's data that we can load up there that is of interest to the industry or interest to just general telecoms, we will put that up on our database, complying with all the legislation. When we started looking at this, data quality always comes up as an issue because we have many legacy systems. We're a local authority. We have a number of we can have just a multiplicity of systems, and we did debate whether we go through an extensive cleansing exercise before publishing our data or publish it with a health statement. We chose the latter because it became clear that the industry will carry out their own checks on the assets in any case if they're going to use them, and they would rather have the data sooner in its current state than wait for us to go through a significant cleansing exercise. And in any event, we also put in processes now that when the data is used and fed back to us, that we will update the data, and we have processes to try and increase the quality. The other aspect is, I won't, you can zoom in, you can switch the data layers on and off. Key one are the data layers are downloadable. Telecoms organisations will not use our systems for network planning. What they want is a data dump that they put into their own planning systems, and they work with that. This is just a picture. So you can probably start off at that level in our asset catalogue, and you can sort by whether you want street infrastructure, whether you want buildings over a certain height. There are various data attributes that are listed within the catalogue. So finally, we set up this telecoms unit, which in effect, it's on the Glasgow Council website, and I'll come back to that at the end. But it's a portal to the asset catalogue, some standard templates. We've listed 4 there. I think 2 of them are up in draft at the moment, but a bit like Sarah said, we know that we will have to update those, we'll get feedback. Some aspects of it may not work, but again, we have 4 standard agreements up there already. We have a pricing and a fee structure where it's standard, and we have rates, etc., where they can apply to interacting with us. Again, we work closely with the Infolink team on that. We have a dedicated member of staff behind that portal to support that coherence between the different council departments. So again, you're dealing with planning, or you're dealing with roads, or you're dealing with finance or legal. We wanted to create a level of coherence between our sort of traditional silos within the council. So that's the purpose of having this unit and having a person behind that. It also gives us a way it gives industry a single point to be able to progress activity and manage through opportunities. Clearly, we want to mechanise as much as possible, but we know that there's still a need for somebody to manage that process behind the scenes. And actually, again, very positive feedback on that, on a simple step of who do we contact in the council. There's now a very clear path to that within Glasgow City Council. In terms of outcomes, again, I know Robbie and Sarah have both talked about the benefits of digital infrastructure. Our biggest outcome is we do want to have good fit-for-purpose infrastructure in Glasgow, and therefore we want to attract the investment pound to Glasgow, potentially competitively over another city if we have a more attractive environment for doing that. Digital infrastructure does support economic growth. It will, we have as I've mentioned, our innovation districts. We have some great ambitions around tech cluster, again, referring back to the Logan review that I think was referenced earlier on in the day. And I know we use the term inclusive growth a lot, but there is a reason for that. We know that we have a digital participation problem nationally. And connectivity will not solve inclusion, participation or interest, but you cannot start to solve those issues unless you have a connectivity foundation, and we recognise that. So I guess I just want to finish up with plug, which is, this is our portal and this is the email address for accessing us. So I'm happy to pass you back to Kevin now, and I'm glad to take questions at the end.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Anne. That was fantastic to hear the perspective of a local authority there. Next on stage, I'm delighted to welcome Elaine Doherty, who is the Regional Lead for North East and Scotland for City Fibre. And it'd be great to get her perspective as a supplier. Obviously, we've heard from government and our local authorities, but as a supplier, just how they fit into the kind of connectivity landscape in Scotland. So without further ado, welcome to the stage, Elaine.
Thanks very much, Kevin. Good afternoon, everyone. I probably should apologise in advance. I'm not sure whether I'm going to multitask and be able to move my slides along. So I work for City Fibre. City Fibre is the third largest infrastructure provider in the UK. We build infrastructure. We're not a service provider. That means we don't have a billing relationship with anyone at all. I want to talk a little bit today about sort of why we do what we do. Excellent. I'm just checking the slides are moving forward. So the UK fundamentally, so this is not Scotland specific. So on the slide we have the Audit Commission. So currently the UK was sitting with about 10%. It's actually gone up to about 14% full fibre rollout. So fundamentally, in comparison to most other countries in the chart and also the OECD nations, the 30 top OECD nations, we're pretty far behind. We are, most, not just ourselves, most infrastructure providers are building and physically digging as we speak to try and get more digital connectivity out there. That's been exacerbated by COVID. We need to do more faster. I think for me, one of the reasons I joined City Fibre is because of those charts. As with a service economy, we have to improve our digital connectivity. And that's why I joined. And in fact, most people who work for City Fibre, the same rationale. So a little bit more around sort of why. Most of this will be familiar to a lot of you in terms of the growth. So this is important to note that this is pre-COVID. So the compound annual growth of internet usage, the chart on the right, the green area, it's looking at sort of today and also looking in the future. So the green area is autonomous vehicles. So we're trying to look at, okay, so where we are today, which is only with 14% full fibre rollout in the UK. I hasten to add that that 14% is not homes. It is a mixture of homes and businesses nationally. So our internet usage is increasing every day, even before COVID. If you think about your own behaviour at home, most of us have switched and started streaming television. So most of us will have Apple TV or we'll have Netflix or we'll have Amazon Prime. So our behaviour has changed. That streaming takes more bandwidth. So our behaviours are changing without us even realising. In a post-COVID world, this is a snapshot of April this year. So it is a month. And I think one of the key there is 300 million daily Zoom participants, up from 10 million in December. So I'm sure all of us attending and all of us on here do lots of Zooming and lots of team calls. So the growth that COVID has caused in our internet consumption is huge. As I say, this is just a snapshot from April. I think there was a recent YouGov survey that polled, it was September, and they polled people to ask about their behaviours post-COVID in terms of working from home, and 57% of people want to continue working from home post-COVID. For that to happen, greater and greater connectivity is required. It's not just the connectivity, it is higher bandwidth and also full fibre. All we build is full fibre networks. We're a relatively new company. We were established in 2011. there's transition, if you just bear with me. We were established in 2011. That's it, brilliant. We were established in 2011, and within that short period of time, 9 years, we have grown to the position of third largest infrastructure provider. We are funded privately. So, sorry, Robbie, at this moment in time, we've no government funding or from UK government, although we will be utilising vouchers, we hope, so for some of the residents in more rural areas. So our mission is very simple. We want to deploy a next generation of future-proof digital infrastructure across the UK. We want to transform digital capabilities of citizens and businesses, and we want to spark innovation and economic growth in a digital age. Our investment is a minimum of 4 billion, up to 8 million premises throughout the UK, and that equates to approximately 30% of the UK market. So a little bit about deploy. So our mission is deploy, transform and spark. So we currently are building or have plans to build in 67 locations up and down the UK. So we actually have 69, but we have only published 67. Our strategy is build in towns and cities, and then we start building out. So we first build the town and city and then move out. So I think exciting is Stirling is our first gigabit city. We originally committed to build 16,000 premises. We've now already built 21,000 in the centre of Stirling. And I think there was a recent Scotland IS report that clearly showed that Stirling has the most full fibre rollout in Scotland. Sorry, there's a pause between screens. So our investment in Scotland is, or certainly the number of homes we'll cover, which is probably critical, is just at the moment 950k. So this changes as we announce our plans. So 950,000 homes and 441 million investment minimum. So we're still looking at how we deploy the network at this juncture. The cities we have announced, so Stirling is complete. We're building in Edinburgh, Glasgow, and work very closely with Anna and her team, and their approach to embracing infrastructure providers is a breath of fresh air. Our strategy when we build to try and minimise, what we do is invasive. Most cities have not seen a major infrastructure project like this for at least 25 years, if at all. 25 years ago was the cable guys, so Stirling, for example, haven't experienced a project like this. So we work very, very closely with local authorities, and to both what Sarah and Anne and also Robbie talked about, it's not just about putting full fibre under the ground. As we build, we have what we call a well-planned city strategy. So we build in additional fibre and capability for 5G, for smart city applications, for IoT, and also for local authorities. So quite a lot of the local authorities we work with, we build public service networks for them, connecting all their commercial premises. As part of looking to digitally include, we also connect all social housing within cities as part of our investment. So that's not just bringing fibre to the base of the building, it is actually wiring the buildings. We do that as part of investment in cities to make sure that there is full fibre accessible for all tenants. And indeed for the local authorities leveraging IoT technologies or CCTV technologies in the future. For 5G, as part of our well-planned strategy, we have little cabinets. They're little because they don't need power, and I'll talk a little bit about the reduced carbon emissions from our new full fibre network. But our little cabinets all have connectivity for 5G. So we recently announced, so in quite a lot of Scottish cities, we're rolling out 5G backhaul at the moment, 4.3. And that is, a lot of people don't understand that with mobile that you actually need backhaul. So when people initiate what's a data call, so effectively they might be shopping with Amazon, when they go online, that data traffic is often carried over backhaul, which is full fibre or will be full fibre networks. It needs to be full fibre networks for 5G. Due to the bandwidth that 5G requires and the quality of service, there isn't networks under the ground today that can support 5G other than the new full fibre networks that are being built. There's elongated pauses between my slides. I do apologise. I'm switching screens. So the investment and indeed the economic impact. So we recruited a company called Regeneris this is pre-COVID, to analyse the potential economic impacts. And I think Robbie talked earlier that actually it's not just for businesses, it is across all aspects of a city and our economy. So we look at every area, whether it's looking at healthcare. So the move, Scotland, NHS Scotland and the Scottish Government have quite a strong technology-enabled care strategy that can really help shift the NHS from curative to a more preventative approach when you have fibre connectivity to people's home and can leverage technology to help monitor health conditions and take more preventative action. So healthcare is quite important. I think also looking at business startups. Traditionally, in businesses, they're more successful if you can reduce the capex outlay at the start and move to more opex. Having digital infrastructure that's full fibre with gigabit capable speeds enables businesses to leverage a whole plethora of cloud applications, which means opex, not capex. So that's just a few of the areas. I've already talked about 5G, so I'll move on to looking at how we continue to spark innovation. So whether it's one of our cities, one of the one we started first, we always have a bit of a wrangle internally. Milton Keynes like to say they're first, but of course Stirling is first, the first completed city. So they already have a drone delivery service throughout the city. So there is so much innovation that can be sparked if you have the connectivity. IoT, Internet of Things technologies talked about a lot. In the future, there will be so many sensors for different purposes within cities. And although they use a little bit of data, there is a lot of them, so they need full fibre to capture the data so that AI, artificial intelligence, can make the right decisions and actually, more importantly, can take actions based on being able to capture that data. And that requires A, the bandwidth, and B, the reliability of fibre, full fibre. So I've talked a little bit already about 5G, so I'll move on quite swiftly. So we have built a network from scratch. We're very lucky. It's not just luck, it's part of our strategy is building a new network. I can't get my slides to move on, if you bear with me a moment. So if you look at Edinburgh as a very good example, there's 19 exchanges from one of our competitors. I don't want to be naughty and mention names in the city. We have 5, and those 5 are new and have more than double the capacity of the entire city, including all residents and all businesses. So you have 5. Our network only uses power on demand because it's full fibre, it's glass effectively, so we only use power on demand. It's not constantly requiring power like copper networks. I think the forecasts are that if, I think there's that reduction. If you look at all the smart city applications, all the health applications, and look at the 57% of people that want to work from home, even that 57% who want to work from home, the reduced traffic on the road, or the reduced cars across the UK will be 2.5 million. Because they won't need their cars to do a commute. That's a massive dent in our carbon emissions. Also, if you're automating and you're using smart city technologies and IoT technologies, all of which need fibre for backhaul to carry the data, there is less van rolls from various different maintenance organisations, be they local authorities, be they energy companies. So it's not just the network itself that reduces the carbon footprint, it's what it enables within a city that can help reduce carbon emissions. And that's it, I think, for me today. Very happy to be here and very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that, Elaine. That was another great talk there, and I think a worthy addition to the panel as well. So I just wanted to take this opportunity. We do have some audience questions coming in, which is fantastic. But I just want to take this opportunity quickly to ask the panel in unison, I suppose. What impact is COVID having on, I suppose, existing government targets and commitments to connectivity? We've seen over the last 9 months how the demand has sort of shifted from being a conversation about purely super fast broadband to now full fibre. So suddenly full fibre is the vernacular that we're all talking about, and yet we're still committed to super fast broadband under many government connectivity strategies. So I just wanted to put that one out there. Who would like to go first?
I'd like to go first, Kevin. I think
Great.
on that one, yeah, I mean, I think we've clearly in the early stages of the pandemic, we did have an impact in terms of certainly some of the programmes that we have. So some of the mass building through the 4G infill programme, for example, went on hold for a few months. I think even in the midst of obviously the restrictions that are back with us, we don't have that so much this time. I think the industry have been hugely, they've made a great response to the pandemic in terms of really embedding effective health and safety and working practices that have meant that deployment is continuing across the country as normal. I think we have seen, I mean, it's not necessarily related to the pandemic. I think we have seen that almost kind of change in conversation and change in the gaze as to where connectivity will be. I think CityFibre can take a huge amount of credit for that, because I think they have been a sort of disruptor, if you like, a positive disruptor in the marketplace, and they've helped shift the focus to full fibre. And I think, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, I think the R100 programme reflects that. It's in reality, certainly in terms of the contract delivery and even voucher scheme, in effect, it's a full fibre programme as opposed to a superfast programme. So, I mean, as I say, I think from our point of view, I think we've seen a really positive growth trend over the last kind of year, 18 months in particular. I think that's reflected in the outcome that we've got from the R100 programme. And I think across the piece, in terms of just the impact of the pandemic, I mean, I think what it has done, it's reiterated the central importance of digital connectivity. We've seen, we can go through various examples from digital health, digital learning. There's lots that have been mentioned in the course of the session so far. But I think connectivity has been so vital through the pandemic in terms of allowing services to continue, but also kind of pointing the way, in some cases, to how those services can be delivered better or more effectively in future. And I guess that's the really exciting bit, is that it's that digital transformation agenda that so many of the organisations are here today at the forefront of. In the midst of this crisis, we have seen some benefits in the way that digital transformation, so many organisations and service delivery has really been driven forward, all of which is underpinned by access to digital connectivity. So, as I say, I think the trend is a positive one.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Do you want me to come in on or that?
Yes, please, Elaine. Yes, please.
I kind of agree. I think superfast was kind of in and of its time, and I do think that CityFibre has been a key catalyst in driving full fibre. I think that's born out of changing business, local authority, consumer needs, and 5G. I think that our behaviour, I think the example I used earlier, our behaviour has changed in terms of how we consume TV without making a conscious decision. I think our behaviour has changed in terms of using, even pre-COVID, but certainly during COVID, using Teams and using Zoom and using lots of online platforms to communicate and share. So they require what's called symmetrical service. They require the same speeds on the upload and the download. Our behaviour fundamentally has changed, which is driving the need for different infrastructure, and that infrastructure to be A, fit for purpose, and B, to be able to support our future aspirations as governments and as local authorities, as businesses and as people. I think, without being sort of really cheeky, I think it would be great if we could see the Scottish Government adopt the, I think it was the Infrastructure Commission. I think they clearly stated that Scotland should have full fibre by 2027. I think that was the date. But it would be great if we could see the Scottish Government adopt something like that, a real drive towards full fibre for its people.
I think there's another element that's also come up here, which is about flexibility in the network. So it's great what we're pushing out, but actually the need for some of the capacity has changed. We've been very much built up on, and it's been developed about putting it in the middle of city centres and industrial parks, but that's not where the people are, that's not where the demand is. And so it's really caused us to change and look at how we deploy the network, and whether that's doing unwind in the urban areas to build up more capacity, or it's about pushing that coverage out further. And I think it was a really good point you mentioned, Elaine, there about remembering that actually mobile needs fibre as much. And we've traditionally always looked at these as two very different things. We've had mobile and we've had fixed. And it's really about blending those two things together and looking at them as a whole network. And I think that's really important to set up for the 5G future as well. So we're pulling all these different technologies, whether it's LoRaWAN, IoT, etc., and looking at them as a complete network. And we've basically been forced to do that because of the current situation and the need to quickly change that capacity and connectivity in Scotland, and look at how we're going to kind of support the new working environments, the new ways of working and ways of doing business.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, I mean, we're not buying fibre for our residents or our businesses, but when we're buying fibre when we're buying connectivity in the council, we want to be, I think, Elaine said the two phrases, fit for purpose and future-proofed, and fibre is key to that. And also attract the rollout of fibre in the city by the commercial providers like City Fibre and other fibre providers.
Thank you. I'm just going to take a few questions. Apologies, I'll be looking off screen at my iPad to look at what the audience is saying. But we've got a question here from Andrew Ralton. Anne, this one is for you. I guess it might be a little bit too early to tell, but can you say to what extent the coordination of or coordinating industry inquiries is going across the council, like by taking that approach that you're taking there, or is it sort of too early to sort of say what the impact of that has been?
I can certainly talk about what's happening. So it's much clearer now when, traditionally it might, I was called a TRO, a traffic manager. I can't even remember what TRO stands for. Traffic, Elaine, you'll know what it stands for, but anyway, basically
regulation,
permission to
maybe?
Traffic regulation order, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But it's permission to put the cones out and dig up the road, etc., and that would go into the roads department. Some of those are, at least we're getting to hear about them, and we can work with the roads department on the liaison, or similarly with planning. We're very close. Planning's a big aspect, because Sarah mentioned the decoupling of the sort of the joint infrastructure for mobile right now, as well as a lot of the work that City Fibre. Well, less so for City Fibre is doing it for 3. So there's a huge uptick, massive uptick in planning activity in relation to telecoms. And previously it wasn't separated out as a particular category by planning, but now we're working closely with our planning team so that we can stay on top of it. We're actually starting now to measure the impact. So whether that's because of the telecoms unit or the fact that we can capture it because we have a telecoms unit, we certainly have an order of magnitude increase in 1 year in the activity around planning to do with telecoms. So you're right. I mean, it's only 4 weeks since we launched the unit, but I hope that by next year we'll be able to certainly give relative change in activity, and then ultimately impact and outcome, which is what we all want, which is the economic benefits of this.
Thank you. And a couple of questions for you, Sarah, if that's okay. The first one is, if local authorities are doing asset registers and standardising procedures, why do we need a national initiative like InfraLink?
I think that's fair comment, given there's a lot of activity that local authorities are initiating themselves. I think it goes back to the reason they're doing that is for some of the reasons that I mentioned about good asset management, about making the process more efficient. But the thing is, with connectivity, it's not planned in an isolated basis. It's planned and operated on a national basis. So you only get the real benefit from that standardisation when you roll it all out across 32 local authorities, across different locations, across different asset types. And that removes the potential for it being a fragmented rollout, promotes efficiencies, and reduces the resource burden on both sides, really. And I would also say it puts Scotland firmly on the investment map. There's different ways that you can go about this, but certainly when we're looking at it from a national piece, we're making sure that we're not transferring the burden on to local authorities. As we mentioned, like they're very strained at present, but we're essentially funding this. So as I mentioned, from the Scottish Government, so we're doing it, essentially taking some of the hard work out of it, but we can and learning from others. And it's been great to work with Anne and the Glasgow team for the here and now and see what's actually happening. So some of the benefits that we expect will come from Glasgow in a year's time, even in 6 months' time, we're going to be seeing some of that. But we're taking that hard work out of it and then being able to provide local authorities with those starter for 10 tools that they can then take forward and take the discussions forward. So it's really, I think at a national level, it's about enabling the local authorities without burdening them.
Can I also say that, I speak to Sarah a lot, and we have no intentions of keeping this to ourselves. And Sarah's team has already offered to be a conduit to roll this out more nationally. And it will need probably tweaking in terms of what Glasgow has done to make it more of a nationally acceptable or nationally applicable. But we're not an island on this. We work closely with Sarah, and we intend to make sure, and so does Sarah, that she's not starting from a blank sheet of paper, because we got help from Infralink and vice versa.
Okay, thank you for that. And there was a second question for you, Sarah, as well, and it's kind of been asked in slightly different ways by two of our audience members. The first one, anonymously, is asking about why Infralink is focusing on public rather than private assets, and that's echoed by Jimmy Johnston, who's asking whether can domestic households access host data masts or furniture. I guess he's kind of asking whether or not you can, as a private citizen, apply to have your property utilised in some way, shape or form by telecoms companies.
So there's the particular reason why we've focused on public sector assets initially, and that's because with that organisation and those assets, we get the best of both worlds. So there are organisations that have got a variety of property types across the country in their area, but if you put them all together, it's across the country. You layer on there also the agencies as well, and you're getting some real densification of information. But they've also got a vested interest in the ultimate aim, which is connectivity. So there's really two motivations there. And if we can harness that at a national scale, it's really powerful message to industry that rollout can be done efficiently, and that we reduce the burden and we focus on the opportunity, not just the deal that's there. But if we can show that this really makes difference, the standardised approach and this being on the front foot by putting the assets up front, by organising the process that sit behind and that standardisation, I think is equally applicable to private asset owners. And in some of these projects, such as Shared Rural Network, we really need private sector to also get on board. The big land estate owners, but right through to those smaller organisations and those smaller asset owners to actually make the most of this public and private sector investment that's been made in SRN. But as I say, I think we're aware that we've got to show this, and we've got to show a case study as to why it makes a difference. And that's why working with Glasgow and West Midlands 5G and Forestry and Land to show how this makes a difference, I think is really key over the next few months.
Thank you very much for that. Elaine, I'd quite like to get your input into that as well. I know you're not involved necessarily in the siting of street furniture and things like that as a supplier, but how is City Fibre working with, I suppose, private businesses in the realms of 5G and things like that?
We, to a lesser, because we're an infrastructure provider rather than a service provider, to a lesser extent, we are doing backhaul for 5G or mobile networks, which is underground fibre, but not necessarily at the moment, not necessarily 5G equipment. In saying that, we do work very closely with local authorities like Anne and her team in Edinburgh and Stirling and other cities and Aberdeen. We work very closely to understand where the assets are so we can help broker those conversations. And also we try and, as we build our network, it's not always feasible, but understanding where the assets are help us understand where we place our cabinets and our infrastructure, because we have 5G connectivity in our cabinets, but also, how closely we need to lay the fibre to lampposts, for example, if there's going to be IoT networks on lampposts. So it might sound odd, but we try and lay our fibre as close to existing street furniture as we can. So the work that Anne and her team do to help identify where the assets are is hugely invaluable to us as an infrastructure provider, because it helps us plan our network better for the future. So So hopefully that helps a little. It's not directly, we don't directly do 5G at the moment.
I think just to add to that, Elaine, it's really good to hear that you're seeing that as useful, because one of the things we're aware is about the investment of time and money in the Infralink and the public sector taking that step, but also got to remember it's about industry and how they respond to that as an alternative to code, tribunal, etc. And it's interesting that one of the things Anne mentioned in her presentation was de-risking the process, because there is that option, but it's also we really need mobile sector to actually step forward and make use of these tools and this opportunity that we hope local authorities and public sector are going to pick up and take forward. So it's really got to be those two sides who are taking that forward.
Yeah.
Robbie, this one is from Andrew Ralton. He's asking about the R100 programme and I suppose working in parallel with the UK government gigabit broadband scheme, to sort of basically ask how efficiently those two programs are working together currently in terms of there being overlap or duplication.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we're still awaiting the detail really of how the UK government's gigabit programme will work in practice. It's just been a kind of headline number that's been announced at this point, and there's no kind of firm plans that are in train for procurement activity in Scotland. I think in terms of ensuring that there's no duplication overlap, I guess the answer is in data, by and large, in data sharing. So we work with commercial providers to get the latest data from them on their commercial plans. We have that kind of live data picture of what's been connected commercially, where the remaining gaps are. And we're really keen to work with UK government to determine where that new investment and where those new procurements can have the most impact. We definitely think there's lots of opportunities for early investment in Scotland alongside R100, and we're working really closely with DCMS and BUK to realise those. So lots of discussions underway, and I think those will continue into the early part of New Year as we get more detail on the precise nature of the UK government's plans.
And do any of the other panellists want to come in on that question in terms of, I suppose you could apply the question to whether it's broadband or mobile connectivity in terms of overlap or duplication?
I think we do. We certainly, and we're not alone. As an industry, we do work closely with the Scottish Government and DCMS in terms of submitting our plans. I think that the Scottish Government's programme has, I'm not going to remember the terminology here, the latest sort of vouchers. There's a couple of options, which I think is a bit more flexible than perhaps others. So I think it's the best way to do it. I think the only concern is making sure that sometimes, and I think Sarah said something earlier, I think sometimes even in cities, the historical infrastructure doesn't even have 30 megabits per second. So even if you look at St Andrew's Square in Edinburgh, so I think so I like the programme. I think it's just good if there's a little bit more analysis looking at, okay, so what the current infrastructure is and how we can help businesses or people in those areas. But that would require us as an industry to share more about existing networks as well. So,
okay, thank you, everyone. I'm just a little bit conscious of time, so unless anyone else is just wanting to chip in their final thoughts, we can draw the session to a close. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, and that's been great. And for all the people watching at home, the sessions will be available as recordings for the next 30 days. So thank you very much, everybody. It's been great. Really enjoyed it.
thank you.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.